This podcast is brought to you by Ranch Vision, the software ranchers use to boost profits and make better decisions.
Hi, I'm Dr. Rich Brazil. I am the founder of Ranch Vision. This program was designed for producers like you. It's a unique, one-of-a-kind, forward-looking software program that enables you to see the results of your management decisions months and years into the future, from your herd numbers to your replacement costs, break-even values, enterprise efficiency, your profit and loss, your cash flow, and so much more. With this program, you can move forward with confidence into the future. Ranch Vision isn't a historical record-keeping program like all the other programs you might have seen. It looks forward. It is a very challenging, very competitive industry, and every ranch business is unique, has different variables, different opportunities, different constraints. Ranch Vision was designed to take uncertainty out of your future, to enable you to plan to profit. Please go to our website to learn more, www.ranchvision.io. Grazing livestock and just grazing animals in general are a significant part of the planet. That really is the planet.
The average age of the farmer in America is 58 years old. That is not sustainable.
We've been hit with water curtailments. We've been hit with low prices by the conditions, by the rain, by the lamb crop, by the calf crop.
I heard a Native American gentleman say, wilderness, that's an invention of the white man, because we took care of this land.
Sometimes fighting doesn't mean shouting and screaming and pounding your fist. Sometimes it's just putting your boots on and being there for work the next day.
It is, are the American people fit to govern themselves, to rule themselves, to control themselves? I believe they are. My opponents do not. I believe in the right of the people.
There are cowboys still around. You just probably don't see them because we're working all the time.
I'm Keely Brazil Cavello, and this is America on One.
Guys, welcome back to the Unwon podcast. I'm here with my friend Kevin Muno from Perennial Pastures in San Diego, California. Kevin, thanks for joining me.
Hey, great to be here, Keely. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been planning this for a while. I've been looking forward to talking with you. Last time we spoke, you hadn't yet finished the certification process for your raw dairy, and now you've done that. You're up and running. You're delivering to customers. Congratulations. That's a big deal.
Thank you. Yes, it was a huge lift, a lot of paperwork and different certifications to go through with the California Department of Food and Agriculture. But at the end of the day, we got it done, and it feels good to finally be putting milk in the tank and bottling milk. So far, our customers are very happy with the product, and we're getting some really good feedback on taste and quality, and folks are reordering. So that's always good.
That's awesome. That's really exciting. Well, we're going to get into some of the regulatory stuff, but first, let's just talk about your background a little bit. So you were a baseball player. You grew up in Los Angeles. You were born in Torrance, I think you said. Went to school in downtown LA. Now you live in San Diego County. Tell me about your true first-gen producer. Tell me about how someone with an urban background, you're an athlete, how do you get into, now you're running a direct-to-consumer operation. You focus on raw milk, but you also sell eggs and protein there in Southern California, which is a tough market to break into.
Yeah, for sure. Well, really, for me, I feel like it's a calling. I've always been a very spiritual person, raised Catholic. I feel like kind of God was calling me in this path my whole life, but really my passion growing up was baseball. So baseball was my avenue to agriculture. Played at University of San Diego, and got really into nutrition and eating grass-fed beef to fuel my performance. And I read a book by Dr. Lauren Cordain called The Paleo Diet, and that really transformed my whole outlook on food and evolutionary biology and eating, and started eating a ton of grass-fed steak and good products, and it fueled my performance. Was squatting 350 pounds, front squats, never got into back squats, but recovering like the next day from just eating tons of beef and just really kind of following that diet to a T. And so I was like, hey, there's something here. I grew up going to the Eastern Sierras as a kid. My grandpa had a cabin in Mammoth Mountain. So,
oh gosh, that's one of my favorite places on earth. That's just so beautiful out there.
It is. It is. And then learning more about it as you get older about the Owens Valley, and the ranching history. I developed a real love of nature going to the Eastern Sierras. And it's such a blessing being able to grow up in California, where you can be surfing one day and snowboarding the next. And there's just so much nature here. Both my families are third and fourth generation Californians on both sides. We have deep roots in California and really a sports family. So again, went to University of San Diego, played baseball there, met my wife there when we were really young, 22. Was when we got married. I had a pretty major injury my junior year. I broke my hand, and this was my draft year for baseball. And I was sitting there in Houston Rice. My grandpa traveled to the game. He was 88 at the time. He's 93 now. My dad was there. So it was this big moment like, hey, you're meant to be a professional baseball player, and, season-ending injury. And I'm just sitting there kind of feeling sorry for myself. And I look over, and through the curtain, there's a guy on life support right next to me. And I asked the nurse, hey, what's going on with this guy? And the nurse goes, we're waiting for his family to come in to say their last respects. He's got a gunshot wound to the head, and he was in a gang-related, accident. So right away, I just, put my whole situation into perspective and, ask God, if baseball's not my path, what is it? And I didn't know at the time, really. I had some interests in nature and family and food, but he was leading me on this path of being a rancher and getting into this field of regenerative agriculture. And I took a permaculture design course in 2013 and started learning about food forestry and soil health. And then I traveled to Wisconsin to go take another permaculture design course with a guy by the name of Mark Shepard, who wrote a book called Restoration Agriculture, which is all about like permaculture on farms, because I wanted to do stuff bigger than that. So I learned about agroforestry, and he's planted chestnuts and hazelnuts, and he's doing alley cropping and grazing and silvopasture things. And then I was blessed after that experience to work with a gentleman by the name of Rodger Savory, who's Alan Savory's son, who is the founder of holistic management, really the base of a lot of these rotational grazing systems that you see today. And if you were to use that word with him, he'd get very mad at you. But,
Wait, why would he get mad at you?
Well, it's, like rotational grazing happens, and that's pretty natural for most ranchers. They move pastures. But if you were to equate holistic management with rotational grazing, like his approach, it's a whole monitoring system for the grass, the soil surface. He's got a decision making framework in there. I think your dad, we were having a chat, like went to some of the early classes that Alan gave, I want to say, in Northern California.
Yeah, he was early on that.
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit too involved on the decision-making side of things. It's trying to force all this complexity thinking, I think, too far down the chain. But it did have a lot of really good observational and fundamental things to offer the ranching world, which was mostly the brittleness scale, and then, this concept of rest and recovery on grasses as well as density. So I was blessed.
Do you think, sorry to interrupt, but do you just think Rodger would say you were simplifying it with that terminology and it's a little more complicated?
Rodger kind of took his dad's, so it's really fascinating. You should definitely interview Rodger, because Alan's like 94 now, and he just came out with his memoirs. But Rodger's got a different perspective, because his dad was really an ecologist and an academic. I mean, before that, the guy was a warrior. He was in the special forces, Rhodesia, like, backcountry, kind of tracking guy. And, was part of the original war there when it was Rhodesia. He's got some gnarly stories. There's a ton of history there. So getting to share like a trailer with Rodger early on in my ranching career, when I was learning to move animals with polywire, and learning the history of Alan Savory, and then Johan Zietzman, who is another guy. He's a original Rhodesian, still lives in Zimbabwe now. He was the original guy that did like ultra high density grazing, where he's doing like the 1 million pounds to the acre with like 4 to like 8 moves per day, and then really worked on the genetics. So I was blessed to get this whole history, of the movement. But yeah, Rodger would say that he really took his dad's ideas and took them to another level, like the genetic side of things, which his dad never really talked about. The whole notion of breeding and trying to bring in the right bulls and then, put pressure on the animals to perform in
Yeah.
a higher grade, selecting the right.
Oh,
So there's a whole,
that's interesting.
yeah, he went to Canada, Australia, he went a lot of different places. So that was kind of my early on career. So I had that injury and then I took these courses and then I got the one ranching
Wow.
gig with Rodger that failed. I've had a lot of failures in my career, but I've learned from every single one. And here I am today. We're still busting our butts trying to make this thing successful, but we've got good traction with a lot of happy customers and just applying all those learnings over. I guess you could say I've been sort of in this space for 13 years now. I'm 38 years old.
What was your position in baseball?
I was a infielder in high school and then moved to the outfield. I could make the really good play in the infield, but I couldn't make the routine play. So
Mm.
they put me in the outfield, and then I was a leadoff hitter and liked to steal bases and bunt.
Got it. All right. We're a baseball family too. You know my husband Nick. He played pro ball for a minute. Baseball will break your heart, even just being a baseball family member. It's a heartbreaking sport, but God has a plan. He always knows what he's doing.
It's true. I was able. There's probably a few folks that have made this connection, but baseball and the throwing motion actually translates quite well to roping. So I was able to kind of jump up on a horse and rope in some of our brandings. I'm not going to call myself a cowboy because that's a whole nother level of skill set. I need another 5 to 10 more years of practice for sure.
Don't we all? I don't think any great horseman or cowboy or what have you has ever called themselves proficient. It's always, I got a lot to learn. That's how you know someone's knows what they're doing.
Yeah, we're all very humble people, which is awesome.
So tell me about, you go from ranching focused on this regenerative model. You got to meet a member of the Savory family, which is pretty cool right out the gate to get to work with Rodger Savory. You went from that to opening a raw milk dairy. I know we're jumping over a lot of years and a lot in the middle, but talk to me a little bit about that decision, why you wanted to open a dairy, which is a big challenge anywhere, but specifically in California.
Yeah, it's a good question. We were leasing 16,000 acres here in San Diego County and had the beef business. And unfortunately, we lost those leases for a variety of reasons. One, we got outbid, and then another one was on water district land, which that was a bit political, I got to say. I'm out there in public in social media, and I don't think they like that. We put over $400,000 into revamping boundary fences on this lease. Most ranches, as you know, Keely, in California and in the West, were built by folks in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, right? So the infrastructure on there is all old. We put as much money as we could on a year-to-year lease into that. And I was negotiating with the landlord to get more leased ground, but a longer term and to invest more money. But unfortunately, they ended the lease. So that'll be a separate podcast. It's an interesting property, though. It's water district ground, and there's a lot of interesting politics, as you know, about water, and probably more than anybody about water and water flow and supply in California. So we'll schedule another podcast for that. But when we lost those leases, it really forced us to look into our business model. Before we had the factory of the cow-calf operation and we could produce our own calves and finish, we leased another 200-acre irrigated property where we were going to finish our beef cows on. But when we lost the factory of the cow-calf operations, we made a pivot to dairy, and it was really customer-driven. We've been in over 10 farmers markets now for over 4 years. And the number one requested product that we would get would be raw milk. So we really wanted to obviously listen to that. I've been a raw milk drinker ever since actually I met Rodger Savory. He got me into drinking raw milk in 2016, was drinking Raw Farms milk, which is another California company, a great company, family-owned business. They have 1,800 cows, I think, out of Fresno. Largest raw milk operation in the world, I believe. That's what they say. So was drinking their milk, family growing up on it. All these customers asking us, hey, would you ever consider raw milk? We lose the leases. We got all this irrigated land. We were running the numbers on, do we do stockers? Do we do this? And we just kept running the numbers and we're like, hey, there's some potential in here from a unit economics perspective. It's 100 times better cash flow or 365 times better cash flow, because you get a product every day as opposed to, in the beef space, you harvest an animal every 16 to 24 months, depending upon how good you are at raising that animal and your genetics. So we just decided to jump in. Kind of crazy. I mean, our business was in this huge flux and everybody's running out of dairy, but we sort of saw this opportunity in direct to consumer raw milk. And we took our skill set of grass management, soil management, animal management, cows, and we're like, okay, yeah, dairy's still a big jump. We've got to learn how to milk and we've got to learn the equipment and bottling around it. But it wasn't too big of a leap for us not to feel confident in that. And so, yeah, we bought a parlor. We imported a mobile milking parlor all the way from Lithuania. They have a lot of much more mobile milking over there. Unfortunately, the CDFA did not allow us to do mobile milking. I think Mark McAfee kind of ruined that for us because he used to have a mobile milking operation up in Fresno. And I don't know, there were some issues with that early on. So they don't allow it anymore, which is a shame because it is a pretty low cost way to get into dairy. Along with land, the other big barrier to getting into dairy or probably any ranching or agricultural endeavor is the capital expenditure to get in, right? I was able to, God blessed me with the skills to be able to go talk to people and to raise money. And I went to business school at University of San Diego. So I was able to get into this whole endeavor with the grace of great investors. And so, minus that skill set, if you've got to do this on your own, being able to get into a low cost mobile milking parlor would be great. So we imported that in and, we started, it was a long process. They made us pour a concrete structure to put that mobile milking parlor on. So we dug a pit. That extra pit cost us quite a bit of money, but we were hoping to be milking 4 months earlier, but it took us a lot longer. But eventually we got it done, and it's been good working with those folks since, but it was a lot of hard work and we should have been, we had herd share members that signed up for their herd share that prepaid. We're now fully certified, fully permitted direct to retail so we could sell anywhere. But the original model was herd share. So those folks were very patient with us as we waited through all of the CDFA paperwork and regulations and whatnot. And yeah, here we are today. We've sold out all of our 45 cows worth of milk and we're looking to buy our next load. And, we're selling really good nutrient dense raw milk, grass only milk, which is pretty unique. There's only 6 certified raw milk dairies in the whole state of California, and we're the only one in Southern California. So,
wow. So that mobile milking parlor, it's not mobile, but you're still using the infrastructure. You just put it on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had to take
I was thinking, man, you had to start from scratch once you shipped it here from Lithuania. That's terrible. Okay, that's good. You found a way to make it work.
Milkers and the claws, and it actually ended up working out okay. But now we're milking 45 cows, and a normal parlor, like one guy or gal could milk 70 to 80 cows, 90 in a really good parlor, like in an hour. We're doing one guy can probably milk 45 cows in like 2.5 hours, so we're a lot slower than so we're looking at some updates already because it was only built for so many cows, but yeah.
Sure.
So, yeah.
So you went from, I'm assuming, did you run Angus cattle in your ranching operation? Now you have A2 jerseys, right?
Yeah. We had Angus was our base, the herd that we bought because we bought a local cattle company that had those leases when I raised the money.
Okay.
They had black baldies, so
Okay.
Angus mamas, and they were using Hereford bulls. And then we brought in some Moshona genetics from Africa, a la Rodger Savory and Johan Zietzman. They're big on that breed. And then we ended up buying some cheaper Corrientes because the cattle prices just kept going up. So we bought some cheaper Corriente mamas, and then we were putting Angus on the Corriente mamas. So we're kind of going for this cross, like the 3-way cross of Angus, Moshona, and Corriente, which we're really happy with. They were doing really well on just grass only, but unfortunately we had to sell that whole herd. We did well because cattle prices were high and it helped us into our transition into dairy. But A2 jerseys, yeah, is where we're at now. And we love that breed. They do a really good job producing, high butter fat and a ton of cream. And I think our customers are really enjoying, like, the biggest probably compliment is like the flavor, where fat, everyone says flavors in the fat. So the high butter fat, and then the mouthfeel, like the creaminess, of the milk, is probably one of our other larger compliments that we get.
Oh, that's awesome. So you deliver, right? Tell me about your business model. It's pretty unique.
Yeah.
You're not just in Whole Foods or Sprouts or whatever.
Yeah,
You guys
yeah.
have a very local model.
Yeah, we're not any stores really yet. We'll probably be in one little small grocery store, but yeah, we deliver direct to doorstep. So we're bringing back the old school milkman, and
That's
we
so
ask
cool.
people that puts coolers out, and it's great
That's
because, like,
awesome.
I mean, I've been out doing some of the routes. We've been growing so fast. Like, I'm out there, I got a Toyota with a flatbed on the back, and I strapped a giant Pelican cooler on the back, and we fill it with ice, and I'm out there delivering gallons, and people, you talk to the people coming back, it's our conversation from earlier, this whole connection between those who eat and get their sustenance from the land and the folks that actually produce it. It's such a cool concept because you see, I mean, in my case, I am the farmer going out there, but we have these ambassadors. And at least in this model, you're seeing somebody from your food system once a week, which is cool. And we're not just doing milk, we're doing eggs. It's not our eggs, but we talk about another producer's eggs, and that's Happy Hen's eggs, and they do corn and soy free, and they're great producers here in Ramona and San Diego, and we're going to get other products going as well that we can highlight other ranchers' stories and kind of be a
That is
conduit.
so cool. I always say California, love us or hate us, we are ahead of the game on everything. For better or for worse, what happens here will happen in the rest of the country a few years down the road. And it's been
Yeah.
a while now that I have noticed, because I'm in Southern California too. I wish I was a little closer to you on your delivery route, but I've noticed we're moving away from vegan restaurants. Sorry, say again?
We can deliver to you. We go all the way up there.
No kidding. I didn't know that. All right, we'll have to talk after. No, but we went away from vegan restaurants. When I was in college in LA, it was all vegan everything. That was the big
Yeah.
thing. And now it's, fermented food, raw milk, beef, bone broth. That's what everybody's doing in LA, in Orange County, I'm sure in San Diego County. So it's interesting to see that shift starting here. And I think it's only going to grow. What are you seeing?
For sure. Definitely. Yeah. You're seeing some pretty prominent folks that were vegan, anyone from actors and actresses to, there's a gal, Molly is her first name. She had a big vegan restaurant in LA. She runs like the American Regeneration Project now. She just had RFK out to their ranch in Texas. So she transitioned from full on vegan. Her brother, Ryland Englehart, I think maybe it's Molly Englehart then too, or I
That sounds
can't
right.
remember.
That sounds
Yeah,
familiar.
but like they were both like, he runs Kiss the Ground, and they were both like full hardcore, and so you just see those people make the transition. And we've had quite a few of our farmers market ambassadors were former vegans that just didn't feel good, got sick, saw regenerative agriculture, and I think that whole approach of humane treatment of the animals and natural settings, vegans tend to be very obviously hard-lined and principled, I guess you could say. I like to say veganism is the gateway drug to regenerative agriculture because it only goes so far until your fertility drops, your hormones get out of balance, all these things happen, and then you're like, God, there's got to be a better way. And then you have a good piece of meat again or whatever. Usually it's bacon or something to start it. And then you come back and, yeah, I think we're definitely seeing a lot of that.
So bacon is the true gateway drug to regenerative agriculture, is what you're saying. No, I totally agree with you. I mean, if you're a vegan or vegetarian, you are highly likely to be hyper health conscious, hyper aware of the environment and animal welfare. And it's really only a matter of time if you're honest with yourself and you're really looking at the information in front of you, that you realize that your body is not going to function as well for most people on that
Yeah.
diet. And animal welfare and environmental health and well-being are best
Yeah.
accomplished through these models that we're talking about. So You make
Yeah.
a really good point. I have a book here in front of me by a former vegetarian who I just interviewed recently,
Yeah.
who's become a huge defender of beef and a cattle rancher herself. So I totally agree with you. And it's encouraging to see people making that shift because, man, we've lost a lot of farmers and ranchers. In the meantime, California, the crisis in the amount of dairies we've lost is, I would say, worse than the amount of cattle ranches we've lost. We've lost a third of our dairies in California in 16 years and an 82% decline since 1992. We used to have in the US, that's an overall number, we used to have 131,000 dairy farms back in 1992, and it is
Wow.
now down to 23,600. This is
Wow.
crazy. That's
Wow.
really, really concerning. And on the flip side, what maybe more conventional agriculture advocates would say is we produce 54% more milk than we did in 1992. So we are more efficient. But what would
Right.
be your response to that as someone who believes in the local, smaller model?
Yeah, it's a good question, and we were talking about this before, this conversation between kind of conventional and I know, say regenerative or sustainable or whatever kind of other alternative
Yeah.
form of agriculture. I think at the base it's all the same. Like we are folks that like to be productive, that like to produce, that care for the land. And I think being first generation, I didn't have any kind of paradigms coming into this. So my paradigm was just what I learned from my teachers, which was soil first. Not that conventional farmers aren't soil first. It was, hey, go to the consumer, make the connection, control the price. Coming from my business background, that was the business model that spoke to me. And the more I learned about sort of the plight of the American farmer and rancher, the more I have become convinced. Now, I don't think everybody can be direct to consumer. Like we still need the producers in these states where there's just not a lot of people, right? Montana has twice the amount of cows than it does people. It just crossed over 1 million people, but it's got 2 million cows. There's quite a few states like that. We need these supply chains that are just more connected in general, and we need more people that are curious about their food and where it comes from, and we just need the relationship. Like I love this whole movement that you're building that seems like the MAHA movement is talking a lot about. What's the guy's name from the farm, or AJ, I
AJ
forget his
Richards.
AJ Richard, the work that he's doing, and connecting the farmer and telling the story. And there's just so much of this language around, hey, shake your rancher's hand and understand. And the longer I'm in this, the more I really believe in that, because before it was to just trust the label. Well, now we're learning really that there's a lot hiding behind these labels. There's some greenwashing going on. And look, we've got a regenerative certification through Regenify that we're proud of. And maybe it's going to be worth something for us someday when we're on the grocery store shelf. But right now, we're going direct to that consumer. We're having conversations. I call my customers up and I say, hey, how are you liking things? It's two diverging paths, massive consolidation and massive farms and production, which is lowering the nutrient value because there's almost so much quality that you can put into a product at a massive scale like that. And so the other path is not necessarily like smaller. Like we're working with this dairy extension guy out of Iowa, Dr. Larry Tranel, and he's kind of created these millionaire model dairy farms, but they're like 300 to 600 cows, which is probably small in the way of the average herd now, which is crazy. But it's this bioregional approach that's based on storytelling, which you're great at. And the farmer is just going to have to learn some of these skills to succeed in this new bioregional model. Like I see that very clearly as the vision now. And dairy is such a good example because it's inherently a perishable product and you can't ship it everywhere across the country or the world. It's best consumed locally. So I hope the model that wins in those two competing models of like massive scale, mass production, feed the world, fertilize as much as you need to kind of like stand up a plant and produce, and this other balance. Like obviously there's good things about that too in terms of efficiency and production and machinery and all these things and making a farmer's life easier with milking machines and that. But like there's a balance and there's a blend of like, hey, we're using virtual fencing and milking machines and all these things on this side, but like the focus here is stories, health, people, connection, community. That needs to be our future because we're at a turning point, right, Keely? You see it. You're seeing it with this administration. We need healthier families. We need people more engaged with where their food. We need more urban rural connection. And again, kudos to you and what you've been doing for the past. I've been following you now for probably 2 years, and like you're one of the only people that I've really been being a voice for the farmers, but in a way that tells a story of connection and like, hey, there's these folks out there that are busting their butts doing something great. They need to be represented. And it's like, anyway, so sorry, I'm getting going on this,
Thank you,
but I'm
Kevin.
very about it. Yeah.
No, I love everything you said. You're so right on, and thank you for the kind words. I think, sometimes it breaks my heart that I live in a more urban area now and I feel homesick all the time, but I think God has a purpose for that too, because it may not be what I thought I would do or what I planned, but we do need to bridge the divide. And I feel like because I've lived in cities for my job and so on, and it's just circumstances of my life, I'm able to talk to urban people, but my roots are rural. And I just think that we're talking past each other a lot. And I feel very strongly that people like yourself need to be at the forefront of this MAHA movement, so to speak, because a lot of the people I see out front, the most vocal, on TV the most, do not have any understanding of agriculture. And you're addressing, in what you're saying, the complexities between, yes, there's a lot of modern developments that are really positive and really helpful. But on the other hand, maybe what have we lost? What are we getting away from? What are we sacrificing? What do we value? Is cheapest always best? We are not a country that has a food shortage. We are a country that struggles with obesity. We're a country that struggles with childhood illnesses and diabetes. We need to look at what we've lost in our consolidated, hyperscaled model and look and see, okay, are we creating opportunities for producers to get started? Because we're losing a lot of producers and nobody's coming in to fill those shoes. And I do absolutely have a problem with consolidating agriculture to the point where only a few players control the market. That's un-American. It's unhealthy. It's not good for the environment or animals.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. And I'm so with you on who needs to be at the front. There's great folks out there like AJ, Will Harris, some of the folks that were with you at the White House. And one thing that I'm totally with you on too is what we don't need is, and I appreciate influencers from what they've done from an awareness standpoint, but you're right, a lot of these influencers don't understand the complexities of what it means to actually be a producer. So when they try to come on their channels and simplify things. And I'll admit it, I've been guilty of it, in the past, and I'm trying to, move forward in a way that tries to share, I think that's the thing with social media is you get rewarded for these viral videos and these short form pieces, but that's also the beauty of like podcasts, and it's got to be this mix of short form and long form that can kind of explain the nuances of it, because it's not as simple as grain finished bad, grass fed good, right? Like if you were to go to a restaurant and they only had grain fed on the menu and chicken and pork, I would go grain finished steak all the way. You're going to get tons of nutrients in that. It was on grass most of its life, and most of these influencers just blow right past that. And in some of the comments in some of my videos, like I try to add context to that, but thank God for podcasts and that, and it's gaining popularity. But yeah, I'm totally with you on who needs to be at the forefront and who, so again, thank you for amplifying voices.
Of course. Well, I mean, anytime a producer is talking, I'm going to listen because they know what they're talking about. But I was going to ask you about, I saw a video you did recently where you said you came out very hard against grain finished beef. And I wanted to ask you about that. But it sounds like you were saying something to grab attention because, I mean, I see it every day and it kind of drives me crazy. I see kids who get on social media. They are not producers. They're not you. They didn't put their money where their mouth is and go start a dairy. They're just talking from their apartment about their opinions about agriculture. They have no idea what they're talking about. They're smearing the industry. They're smearing people who deal with a lot more regulation and complexity than they can understand. So you have to compete with that because those videos get millions and millions and millions of views. It's so easy to just throw out a really piping hot take, right? And it's a lot less interesting and spicy to have a nuanced conversation. So I hear where you're coming from, where, yeah, you grab someone's attention and then, but let's have a real conversation about it. Is grass finish better? Sure. In an ideal world, yeah, there are some health benefits. So I agree with you there, but I would agree with you also that grain finished is a great product, especially compared to what the vast majority of Americans are eating most of the time.
For sure. 100%, on the MAHA movement. And if you go through the comments on that one post, like you'll see I talk about that. And like my thing with the poisoning piece, which poison's probably a strong word, but the conversation around omega-6 and inflammatory, there is a thread in the beef space that's like all beef is good. And I just have to, like, I agree it's better than Twinkies at 7-Eleven and Doritos and Cheetos, right? Like eat whole real foods, right? But let's get into the nuance of polyphenols and vitamins and again, grain finished beef is high in vitamins and a lot of those things too, but it comes really from the rations that, these animals are being finished on. And again, I'm grateful for feedlot guys too. Like when I go to the restaurant, that beef probably wouldn't be there if there wasn't hardworking folks producing stuff. And we can't, it's a lot like Elon Musk, right? Where he's a proponent of oil and gas, but he's like, we can't shift to solar and electric driving car overnight. And same in the beef industry.
Mm-hmm.
It's gone so far to, like, everybody used to be a grass-fed producer, but the popularity of feedlots and centralized production, let's be honest, that hasn't been good for the cow-calf producer either, because it's concentrated market share. It's given up, our ability to like set our own price. And so on one side, that has been good for the consumer because price of food has come down, but we've got a long way to go in terms of getting back to like feeding our country from grass-fed genetics, smaller animals that could finish. Like the knowledge base is left. Like, how do you manage grass? How do you get good perennials going out into the landscape again to finish well? How do you irrigate? There's all these other integrative skills that are frankly a lot more involved than just, hey, I've got 8 pastures. I rotate my 8 pastures. Yeah, I'm a good cowboy and I can rope and gather my cows, but I've got a job in town and I go to that job and I cowboy on the side. Maybe I got 100 head and I ship my calves off once a year to get my check. Like that's less involved, let's say, than, okay, I've got a direct market now. I've got to learn how to market. I've got to learn how to finish. I've got to learn all the cuts, right? There's more involved with that. So yeah, that's where the nuance comes in for me, is kind of that whole conversation around where are we at now and how do we get to these other places while also bringing in new producers, right? Like this whole thing is so complex. There's so many threads you could take. And on the omega-6, like again, inflammation is the core factor in chronic disease in this whole MAHA. Some of these products like Wagyu or whatever, like they're showing up at 8-2, 10-2, omega-6 to 3, or 8-1 or whatever. And most scientists agree like the optimal is 3-1, 3-1. And a lot of this grass-fed finished is like 1-1. So if you eat a good grass-finished steak, and I get there's a whole conversation around tenderness and all that too, which comes back to genetics and learning how to produce and finish again on grass. But like you're having an anti-inflammatory experience eating that. Again, I know not every producer is full on grain at the end too. There's like mixed systems where maybe there's a little bit of grain at the end and that might have a better profile. So there just has to be more conversation about it, in my opinion. And at the end of the day, the goal is to make people healthier, make producers more profitable and resilient for the long run. And all of these threads, need to be discussed in detail.
Completely. Well, I'm just thinking as we're sitting here having our maybe different viewpoints on these different things, how much better it is that we're having this conversation rather than the conversation we would have been having maybe 10 years ago of, is beef even a good idea? Should we be eating beef at all? Should we be grazing cattle at all? Should we move to fake meat grown in a petri dish? Should we be eating a vegan diet? Like, this is such a better place to be. And I think it's really positive that producers like yourself are willing to have the debate. I don't think it's good to refuse to have the debate. The guys who are more traditional, conventional, maybe 5th generation rancher, they should welcome the challenge to have this discussion, because at the end of the day, people are excited about your product again, and they want to know about how it was raised and how it was produced. That's a factor of this new generation. They have a lot of concern around quality and sourcing, and I think that's a really positive thing, because the rancher in America does have a very positive story to tell.
For sure. Totally. Yeah. And when it comes to that conversation around should we have cows or anything like that in general, or ranching in the West, I go right back to the producer side on that. Cows are, beneficial for landscapes, and we know that in this whole national park, deal and BLM land and that whole conversation around grazing on those spaces. Like, it sounds like we're having conversations again there, where before it was just, no, cows bad, like minimal animal units on Western landscapes. And I hope we can have a more dynamic conversation about how healing cows and other ruminants can be on these brittle landscape. We need more cows. And I mean, there's these nonprofits out there that have these billionaire donors that they like, just giving it back to nature and rewilding, which we know that from Alan Savory 40, 50, 60 years ago. You just let something go back to nature and it'll just turn to desert. So I'm with you. For better, for worse, God has put me in this space of kind of like an edge walker, first generation, this, that. But like, yeah, when I go talk to my friends in the city, they're like, what do you think about this? Let me tell you. And so, yeah, it's good. It's just good to, you're right, be having the conversation and to be out where we're at today.
Right. Because, and again, just to reiterate, my concern is if we allow people who are more interested in internet attention or quick headlines to lead the way, that will just result in losing more producers. If we allow people who are not familiar with agriculture, who are outside the industry, who are more invested in growing their YouTube channel and their Instagram account than truly coming up with solutions that serve people and the land that we live on and the animals that we raise, I'm very concerned that ultimately that will only go poorly for the American consumer and the American producer, because we're going to lose more and more producers if their story is misrepresented. Those regulations come from misinformation. They come from lies about producers. But let's quickly talk about, so we've talked a little bit about beef production. Let's move that to raw dairy, because that's a hot topic right now. Tell me about, and I'm on the fence on this one. I'm not an evangelist for raw milk or for traditional, but I'd love to hear from your perspective. Tell me about.
You're neutral. You're neutral. That's cool. Or I don't know.
I don't know if I'm neutral, because I'm pro producers. I'm pro all of this. So if you listen to the people who read my work, they will tell you I am not neutral, and that's fine. Yes, sue me. I think that people should be able to eat, and I think we should have farmers and ranchers. Yeah, you caught me. But I do want to hear from you as a producer. Yeah. Tell me about what your consumers, what your customers are seeing, and why you believe in raw milk. What's the argument for it? Talk to me about this movement that is not going anywhere. It's only growing. More and more people want raw milk.
Yeah, sure. Well, it goes back to kind of the beginning. Obviously, in the Bible, they weren't talking about, pasteurized milk, right? So, we'll start there. And, I know not everybody's probably Christian on this channel, but that's where it starts for me. Is God created a cow and created milk, and we've been drinking milk for 10,000, 12,000, 14,000 years, maybe, ever since we go, hey, that thing over there, that other animal's suckling on it. I'm hungry. Can I get some of that? And God put those animals in our life. And so, so for me, it starts with that. It's a perfect food, great blend of protein and fats, and it feeds our gut health, which now we're learning, we're mostly, our microbiome, we're 9 trillion bacterial, fungal, viral, cells, and we're 1 trillion actually physical human cells. So, raw milk is extremely beneficial for feeding our gut microbiome. It's a kind of an interesting history of how pasteurized milk got so popular, especially in this country, and it's a story of sort of the rural urban divide. We moved to the cities. We brought our cows there. We brought our production there. We started producing a lot of grain. Those cows started eating lots of grain in the cities in bad conditions. And this all coincided with the invention of the microscope and learning about microbiology. and everything got blamed on milk because kids were dying in the cities, and we had outbreaks in London, in St. Petersburg, in Russia, in New York was the biggest one, here, Philadelphia, all these big cities. Yeah, there was an issue, one with the water, but also the production practices on the milk side of things. And it became sort of a demonizing of milk story. Guy by the name of Nathan Straus took Louis Pasteur's technology of pasteurization, came up with the par boiler, and started centralizing production, bringing this milk in from all these different producers and going, hey, we have the customers, we're in the city, we'll boil it and we'll get it out to the customers. Meanwhile, another gentleman by the name of Henry Coit, is a physician, Dr. Henry Coit, started the medical milk movement right around this time and started standardizing the first standards for raw milk in the country. This is all in the early 1900s. Donating his time with like 100 other physicians. This is how you produce good, clean, raw milk. They went out and developed the medical milk movement, which started healing people. They went on these diets, and you can read all the books like The Milk Diet and the medical milk movement, and Dr. Weston A. Price's research around ancestral foods, and a lot of them stemmed around dairy cultures, but mostly just animal products and food. And so those were kind of like the two movements. Clearly, pasteurization won out because probably there was more economics behind it. And Mr. Nathan Straus probably lobbied the right politicians and just kind of got that thinking into our national mindset more. And, we were moving west, and that just kind of spread. And then you have World War II and kind of the production mindset and all these things, right? But the early on genesis of raw milk in this country was based on pasture-based livestock, a ton of grass going into the diets, and very clean standards. So that's where we're at today. We were taught this from other pioneers in the movement, like Mark McAfee. He developed a nonprofit called the Raw Milk Institute. They call it RAMI, and it teaches other raw milk farmers how to be clean. So we have an on-site lab that we test the milk for every bottling. I'm feeding my 4-year-old son and 2-year-old daughter this milk, and I just believe it's how it should be done. And we're learning about the health benefits of it, and then also some of the disadvantages of pasteurized. Same story with grain and grass finished beef. Are you getting a lot of nutrients from, I'll say, vat pasteurized, like low temp vat pasteurized, because that's kind of another category in the pasteurization. I think ultra pasteurized milk is not good for anybody. I think pasteurized milk, low temp, can be good for somebody. But if you have a product that's out there that's way better, and you have a source that's trusted and clean and reputable, and it's got a track history. Now, I recognize we don't have that long of a track history of 6 months producing, but you got to start somewhere. So I don't know. I just feel like the economics are better for the farmer. It's better for the consumer. There's less things. It helps your health. Like, we get so many stories of folks like, I can drink your milk, can do this, can do that. And we've only been producing 6 months, but we've got over 1,000 customers now. And yeah, that's how I feel kind of on the whole, spectrum of to pasteurize or not to pasteurize.
What are some of the health benefits that are connected to raw milk?
Well, the gut microbiome, better digestion, you're getting
Have you seen, I've read some studies about childhood asthma, childhood allergies. Have you seen that in practice? Okay.
Yeah, so I can't talk about it too much at this point, but we have the potential of investing in the first human health study in the States with our milk. So one of our investors has put some money into a study, and we're really excited about it. It's with a group that's done these types of studies before, and there's been studies in Europe on asthma, ear infections, and they're all observational studies. This will be the first ever clinical trial, and it's a small clinical trial with 72 people, but we're going to be studying the human health impacts of raw milk compared to pasteurized milk here in the next year. So
Oh, that's
state.
really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I
Yeah.
was researching this, I saw some studies in Europe on farm kids who drank raw milk with lower rates of childhood asthma and allergies and so on. But that was not a randomized trial. That was kind of a observational study, and even the authors cautioned against reading too much into it. There's never been a
Yeah.
randomized trial, so that's really exciting to hear you guys are going to be potentially be part of that. We are one of the only states, correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, where you can legally sell raw milk to a retail store. So that's at
Yeah.
least there's a little more freedom around that.
I think 30 states like are allow it, but not every state allows you to sell retail. I think it's less than 10 allow you to sell like at a store. Pennsylvania is another big one. They're very pro, so yeah, I know, we've got a lot of things that we've got to work on in this state clearly, but we're very pro dairy, and the CDFA folks have been pretty straight shooters with us. And we're new dairymen, and our inspector, he's a former dairyman himself, so he's helping us. He's like, hey, like be aware of this or be aware of that, and we're like, oh, awesome, cool. And so
Yeah.
I would love for there to be a way where we could work together. Like we're doing this testing. We do testing every batch. They do testing once a month. But I'm like, hey, let's team up on this. You guys got a lab. Should we have a lab? And so I think we're going to learn a lot of things that hopefully can influence policy in our state. And all we ask for as producers is that the regulators, are open to change and adjusting policy. Because like the response I got for why is mobile milking, like, oh, you can't do that. Well, the response is like, well, it's not in our code. And I'm like, well, maybe you should look at the code, because the plight of the California dairyman hasn't looked too good based on the stats that you referenced earlier over the last 20 years. Like maybe if they were a bit different, we might have more producers, or if we lowered the barrier of entry or whatever, right? So those are the kind of
Yes.
conversations that we need to have.
Right. I mean, to that point of the bigger issues around MAHA, fixing these alleged issues with more regulation and not including producers in that conversation ends up benefiting the corporations that you say you're opposed to, because corporations have the money and the funding to conform to regulation. But what's the
Right.
outcome? Is it better
Right.
for the animal? Not always. You can't address these problems with blanket solutions, with more government crackdown. What you get is California, where we do have a severe crisis in our dairy industry. I recently found out my great uncle Joe, because I'm Portuguese, we discussed our
Yeah.
probably being cousins earlier. Yeah. My great uncle Joe came to Huntington Beach back in the day, World War II vet. He was like 15 years old. If I remember the story correctly, he came to Huntington Beach to work on a dairy for his relative. He said he worked so hard he never even saw the beach. He just worked sun up to sundown every day on this dairy. And I live near there now, and I'm like, I can't even imagine a dairy in this hyper urban area. So we have really lost a lot of producers, especially in Southern California. That's where the crisis is worse. So have, right? I mean, you guys are probably one of the
there was
only
like 100
dairies.
dairies in San Diego County, 180, and now there was one left before we started up, and I think we're the first one to start up in over 30 years in San Diego County. So yeah, we need
No kidding.
I'm hoping this could be a model that we can talk about. Like, hopefully, we can be profitable. And I would love to see, 10 other dairies start up in San Diego County, because that's what we need. And if it's low cost, low startup method, then that's kind of the key. We're not going to be able to compete with AI or finance or real estate if you can't make a living doing it, So we hope we can be a model here. And then, there's folks with passion, but we need a clear path, and we're not there yet. I hope 5 to 10 years down the road, we'll be at a point where we can like talk about it and document, okay, this is like how much we spent and this is what we made. And, you could expect this, and go direct to consumer and all these things, so we'll see what happens.
Well, the courage to start something new, especially the first in 30 years, is incredible, speaks for itself. California, on the other side of having a lot of regulations and, being a tough state, they also do have some of the strictest standards in the world for raw milk, correct? Your milk has to hit 15,000 bacteria per milliliter and 10 coliform per milliliter at the moment it reaches the customer, which is the same standard as pasteurized milk. That sounds like a very big hurdle to get over for permitting. Can you talk to me a little bit about food safety standards in California and what your process looks like for compliance?
Yeah, so our standard plate count numbers have been well below 1,000, so not even close to that 15,000 number. And I think raw milk might even be a little bit lower than that. I think pasteurized is 15, but raw milk might be 10 or 5, but I'd have to look at it. But
Okay.
yeah, that 10 number on the coliforms is there, and sometimes we have 1, but very rarely. I thought it was going to be, I got to be honest, like I thought it was going to be harder. Like we pay attention to it like a hawk. Our general manager, Dion, does a great job just staying on the team in terms of cleanliness, and we're testing it. But I don't think, like if you're a aspiring dairyman, dairywoman out there, or farmer, wanting to get into this space, I do think it's one of the more attractive industries. Like I do think that we could have like a raw milk revolution in California because we have so many people. We're going to produce a fraction of a percent, of what the consumption is on our little 200-acre dairy. So we need more producers, and if you have any sort of gusto, like just go do it.
I love that. Well, I'm probably overly optimistic, but I always think with the AI revolution and all of these changes coming, people are freaking out. They're worried about what the future looks like. Number one, you are not going to replace a rancher or farmer with AI. That is not happening. So your job is very, very safe. And two, I hope that it cuts out a lot of the stuff that keeps us at our desk, the busy work, the nonsense, and opens up more opportunities for connecting to nature, getting back outside, maybe more of these smaller farm ranch models. That might be the most delusional take about AI that you'll hear, but I don't know. Innovation, I believe in American innovation, and I'm hoping that it opens doors for more young people to look at new opportunities for jobs, coupling that with millennials and Gen Z, their concern about quality and animal welfare and the environment. Could be some really cool opportunities ahead, especially for these niche markets. I'm not a raw milk drinker. I'm going to be honest. I do worry a little bit about listeria. I know some crunchy influencers who are already saying, okay, I got listeria a couple times. I'm moving away. But I don't know. You're changing my mind a bit, because if you do have someone like you, if I am on your delivery route and I know my farmer and I know where it's coming from, I feel a lot better about it.
Yeah. And you could come out and look at our operation and see it for yourself, and make a informed decision. That's the beauty, I think, of having these local food systems. And you just, like, we do tours, and if a farmer tells you like you can't come see their operation, like that's a red flag. So yeah, I mean, it would be great, to have you have the confidence in it, because I was there too. Like, to be honest, like when we first started, I had a ton of trust in Raw Farm because they'd been through a lot of this, like some recalls and this and that. But like, I eventually went up there like right before we were going to start this, and they've got like a full-time microbiologist from Fresno State, like in their lab. They got 12 different PCR machines, where they do this daily, and they're actually testing for the live pathogen. Like we're testing for standard plate count and coliforms, which are the precursors to any pathogens. But like our next step would be actual pathogen lab on site, but it's like $100,000 or whatever to like get that going. So obviously we're not quite there yet, but I do feel very confident in our system. It's very simple. We have short milk lines. We do a great job of cleaning. We wipe the crap out of the udder before we start milking. We're pedantic around cleanliness on the parlor and the udders and everything. So yeah, I think the more you come out and see that, and and yeah, it's just about making an informed decision. But do you buy what do you buy, Alexander's milk or the green bottle?
That's exactly what we've been getting. Yeah, the A2
That's a
stuff.
good.
But
That's a really like Alexander's, and they're a great family, good people, just like the Raw Farms folks. And yeah, if I was to recommend a pasteurized brand, it'd be that green bottle, for sure, because that's low temp vat pasteurized too. So I think it like just barely crosses the threshold. So they've had that nutrient
got
density
it.
tested too. So They've got really great pastures in Crescent City up there. I'm sure, being where you're from in California, you've spent some time on the Redwood Coast. So
Oh, that's awesome. Well, now that I know I'm on your delivery route, we may be changing our milk supplier here. Can you tell people, how do people shop from you? You do have an online presence. You have sell some stuff online, direct to consumer. Tell people where they can find you and follow what you're doing.
yeah, perennialpasturesranch.com is our website. And then we're on Instagram. I think it's Perennial Pastures Ranch too on Instagram, and TikTok. I think it's just Perennial Pastures. And then we're on X. I think X is Regen Ranching, but yeah, that's where you can stay in touch, sign up for our email, come to a ranch tour. We're going to start our ranch tours up again, probably September or October. It's really hot, and we're in the inland part of San Diego County, so like the other side of Palomar Mountain. So we're kind of on the Temecula side. So it's been getting up into the triple digits here, in July and August. But yeah, that's the best way, to stay in touch there. And we deliver to most areas in Southern California. We're not doing Inland Empire quite yet. We've got a facility in LA that we deliver out of, and San Diego. So we can hit most areas in SoCal.
Okay, very cool. Well, maybe this next time we record, maybe I'll be on your ranch and we'll do a podcast live from Perennial Pastures. I'm always just so impressed with anyone who has the guts to build something new, particularly in this industry. I recommend everybody follow Perennial Pastures, see what you're doing. You're the type of person who should be out front in all of these conversations. I'm so grateful we had this conversation, that you made time for me. Thank you, Kevin.
Hey, thanks, Keely. Thanks for what you do and what your family does for this space. I know, you come from a big family, and they all do great work here with Ranch Vision and your pops and your husband and everybody. So congrats on the baby, and we're excited for the next one. Definitely on the ranch. It's supposed to be an El Nino year this year, so we don't have our irrigation
That's
up
what they
quite
keep
yet.
saying.
Yeah, we'll get out in those green pastures, maybe more towards the winter or the spring. So
There you go. I'm looking forward to that.